Steps for breaking it down. Okay, so we want to identify the writing goal. You've already done this for one thing that you want to do on the little piece of paper we started with. Then plan the actions to achieve the goal. So we break it down into these steps. These are the steps we're going to work with right now. First, identify your writing goal. You're done. We already did it for today. Number 2, write down the deadline and the due date. This is the second thing you need to do. We need to know the timing. The third thing, we need to know all of the steps and all of the requirements to complete it. We're going to call this chunking, okay? We're going to talk about it in more detail here in a second, but that's going to be our third step. The next is to put more tasks at the beginning. This is a little trick. If we put more tasks at the beginning to get them all done, then we don't end up at the very last minute awake all night for 3 nights trying to finish writing, because we front-loaded everything so that at the end we can just be working on those revising things and we're not too stressed the day before the deadline. So try to put more things at the beginning so that when you're still energetic and the ideas are still fresh and you still have passion for the ideas, that's when you're working on it, because later you will wear down. And so if the more of the work is done at the beginning, then by the time you get there, it's just revising and cleaning up and making it perfect at the end. And the last one, plot out steps backwards on the calendar. So we have that deadline, we have that date from the second step. Now, look at the calendar and go backwards and say, okay, I know this is due on December 15th. If I back up from there and I say 1 week out, this is when I want to be doing my final corrections, my final proofreading. 1 week before that, this is where I want my final revision process. And then 1 week before that, this is when I want my final draft done. I want the actual writing is done. Because then, now it's been 3 weeks. Now I have 3 weeks to just perfect. Just tinker around with it, little minor changes. But then I'm not rushing right up into the deadline to December 14th, still working on everything. So I only have 1 day to make corrections. So start at the end and then step backwards so that you can get the bulk of that work up front. But plot this out on the calendar backwards. Okay? Oh, wait, and then I have a little call out. Wait, what if this isn't how I approach writing? What if that's not the way I do it? Am I doing it wrong? No, you're not doing it wrong. Remember, there is no right way to write. We talked about this at the beginning. If this is not the way that you work, if you work better as of someone that dives right into it and that just, you spend 2 days writing and you do nothing but just write, if that's the way that your process works, that's okay too. That's okay too. What kind of writer are you? We have 4 different kinds here. The first one we have is the diver writer. You just jump right in. You start the writing process early, and you just don't even care where you start. You just put your pen down, and you just let your ideas come right out of your pen. The diver writer. Patchwork writer, like someone who takes the pieces of material and stitches them together. You write the sections, and then later you hook the sections together. This is another personal preference. The grand plan writer. You read and you make notes and write a plan so that you have all of that done before you actually sit down to write anything. And when you do sit down to write it, it's already pretty much in your head. You've already written it in your brain. Now you just need to write it on the paper. And the last one is the architect writer. This is a person that has a sense of the structure and could produce a complex plan or spider diagram even early in the process. I would say, for me, I am a combination of these last 2. This is the way I prefer to write. This scares me, to just dive in, just start writing anywhere. This is not how I do it. It makes me too nervous to even look at a piece of paper when my thinking is still not clear. Then this to me feels like a waste of time and overwhelming. I prefer to have all of my research done, to have all my notes, have everything organized into folders, and I like talking to colleagues And then the more that I say it and I express it and I get feedback from them, then it starts to become clearer in my mind. So that by the time that I sit down, I've already explained this to 5 different colleagues, so I already kind of know the best way to explain my ideas. So I'm somewhere between these two. You may be one of these categories. You may be 2 different ones. Maybe for one kind of writing, you're one, and for another kind of writing, you're another. I would say that that's true of me, too. The diver writer, when I write creative, non-creative fiction, I'm more of a diver writer. I just need to jump in and just try to learn about a character and what kind of dialogue does this character say. And I need to think about the character a little bit more before I'm ready to think about a plot and what happens and the conflict with the character. I'm more of a diver writer when it comes to creative writing. For nonfiction writing, I'm much more structured. This is my personal preference. But different kinds of writing, I prefer a different style. Okay, backward planning. In this example, Ingrid, that's me. I didn't write this part of the presentation. Someone else did, so they used my name. So I need to write a 5-paragraph essay for my English language fellowship application, which is true. I did have to do that at one point. The application is due on December 31st, 2015, and I'm very busy as a full-time teacher, but I know that I can only work for about 2 hours a week on the essay. I don't have much more time than that. I only have about 2 weeks every week, or 2 hours every week to work on this. My deadline is December 31st. How am I going to complete this task? So you have some printouts here with a backwards plan and a calendar. So I want you to join a couple people around you and write down the deadline first. Think about the steps that it needs to take. So here are some, I'm providing you the steps of things that we need to do. Pre-writing, thesis statement, introduction, supporting paragraphs, conclusion, revisions, a second draft, revision, a final draft, and submission. These are the steps that I think I need in order to complete the application. So the first thing you need to do in your plan is write down the deadline. The second thing you need to do, think about these steps. The third thing is to plot out the steps backwards on the calendar. So you have a blank calendar. You can put the deadline on, and then you can work backwards through the steps and try to put more tasks at the beginning. You know that I only have about 2 hours every week to work on it. Okay? So work with a partner or 3 or 4 of you together, someone that you're sitting near, and see if you can plot and plan out this assignment. Okay? Yes? Yeah. I think it's up to you. I think it would probably be 2 hours in one block, but if you think you could spread it out, half an hour, half an hour, half an hour. Yeah, I think it's easier to plot it out if you think of it as a 2-hour window, just 2 hours together, 2-hour chunk. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, great. I'm just going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes. It shouldn't take that long to just put these on your calendar. I'm going to give you about 1 more minute, and then I'll show you my version, okay? Here's my version. This is just one example. You may have something very different. This is just one example. We just used the month of December. Submission is due on the 31st. This is where we start. And then we want to back up from there. We said, final draft right here. Second draft revision, second draft. The 14th, first draft revision. On the 11th, I want my conclusion done, supporting paragraphs, introduction. So this is the bulk of my actual writing processes right here in the second week. And then thesis statement on the 3rd. So I kind of already, the beginning of the month, first week, I pretty much have an idea in my head of where this is going to go. I know my thesis. I know the direction I'm headed in. The second week, this is mostly my drafting. The third week, this is first draft revision, new draft. Third week, revision. And then at the end, all I'm doing is my final draft revision submission at the end. Do you want to know how I actually did this in real life? Oh, you have a question? Yes. Do we have a microphone for our question? Here, I'll give you a microphone.
Okay, my name Andy. My question is, we have only 2 hours, almost 2 hours in a week. Then I wonder that we can accomplish in the second week of December. We write down the introduction, we make introduction, and then we should develop in a supporting paragraph as also conclusion within 2 hours. Okay. Thank you.
This is a good question. I think introduction, supporting paragraph, conclusion, all in 1 week. That's a lot. That's a lot of drafting. If you remember back to one of the beginning slides where we showed the writing process with the yellow, and then the drafting process was orange, and then the revision process was green, the drafting process really isn't that long. It really doesn't take that much time in the perspective of the entire process. So I think that's the idea behind putting this all together. To write the introduction for this application, this is a short essay. It's not a long essay. So really writing an introduction, maybe this only takes me 20 minutes to write the introduction. My supporting paragraphs, maybe that takes me more like an hour. And then my conclusion, again, maybe this only takes me 20 minutes. Because this is not a long drafting application process. Now, if this was a piece I was using for publication, it's 30 pages long, single-spaced, something like that, then no, this is too much for 2 hours in a week. But for this particular assignment for a short personal essay, drafting an introduction, 3 supporting paragraphs, and a conclusion is, it's a lot in a week, but it can be done. One of my teachers when I was in high school trained us to write a paragraph in 20 minutes. And so that's generally what I aim for in my work. I say in 20 minutes I should be able to write a good paragraph, a really good paragraph, not just like a quick 5 sentences, move on to but a really good solid paragraph in 20 minutes. And so a lot of times that's what I use to keep myself on track, is to say if I have my brain on and I'm really paying attention, then in 20 minutes I know I can write a good paragraph. And so on Monday I would probably set a timer, 20 minutes, say I need to have a good solid introduction in 20 minutes. And then on the 9th I would know this is going to take me longer because I know I need maybe 5 paragraphs. So I already know I need to set aside more time on Wednesday. But then on Friday, 20 minutes, I should be done with that. I should not be allowing myself to struggle over a conclusion for an hour and a half. It's time to just call it and say, enough, you're done, go do something else. Because I try to keep myself accountable to that idea of about 20 minutes. About 20 minutes. And not it doesn't have to be hard and fast 20 minutes, but it helps me generally keep on track so that if it takes me 30 minutes, it's okay. I don't give myself a hard time about 30 minutes. But in reality, I found out about the English Language Fellows program on, I think, the weekend of the 17th and 18th. I didn't even know about the program until the 17th and 18th. And I found out that the deadline was the 31st. A friend told me about the program. I didn't even know it existed. And he told me about the program on the 17th or 18th. And he said, I don't think you can send it in time. It's a very long application process. But when I looked it up and I looked at all the requirements, I realized I already had the materials for most of the requirements. You needed, I think, 2 lesson plans. I already had the lesson plans ready to go. They were already on my website, on my professional teaching website. They were all ready to go. So all I had to do was upload them. I already had the letters of recommendation because I'd been sending out applications to other places. So all I had to do was upload them. I had personal statements already written for other things. So I really didn't have to go through writing an introduction, writing all the paragraphs, all of those steps in the first 3 weeks. I already had this done for other applications. So it was just really revisions for the last 2 weeks. So really I just went through and did a second draft revision. I did a final draft, and it was ready to go on time. So it surprised me, and it surprised my friend, because we thought, there's no way. It's the 17th, it's the 18th. There's no way you can get it done in 2 weeks. But then when I sat down and I looked at the deadline and the requirements, and I said, oh, I already have all of this ready. It's ready to go. So I was in a good place already because I had been very organized about the other applications and the other scholarships and job applications I'd been putting in. Then I already had access to these materials, and they were ready to go.